My parents begged me to take in my nieces, but there's a catch they won't admit. My name is Ruby Harrison, 32 years old, and until last month, my biggest concern was finishing a design project for my wealthiest client in Chicago. Then came the midnight call from my parents. My sister Elaine was in a coma after a car accident, and they were begging me to take in my nieces. I agreed immediately, not knowing they were hiding something that would change everything. If you've ever had family keep life-altering secrets from you, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about family secrets that nearly cost everything. I had built a pretty comfortable life for myself in Chicago. As an interior designer catering to the city's elite, I could afford a sleek minimalist apartment in one of the trendiest neighborhoods. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the skyline, and my furniture was a carefully curated collection of mid-century modern pieces and contemporary art. My morning routine was sacred espresso from my Italian machine, a quick workout, and then diving into design boards and client calls. My social calendar stayed full with gallery openings, restaurant launches, and cocktails with other creative professionals. Dating was casual, nothing serious. I valued my independence too much to compromise. This life I had built was completely separate from my family back in Millfield, Indiana, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Growing up in Millfield, I had always been the odd one out. My sister Elaine was the golden child. She got straight A's, was homecoming queen, and followed our parents' expectations to the letter. I was the rebel questioning everything, dressing differently, dreaming of a life beyond our small town. My parents never quite knew what to do with me. Ruby, why can't you just be more like your sister? My mother would sigh whenever I came home with an unconventional art project or a less than perfect report card. My father would shake his head silently, disappointment etched into the lines of his face. Elaine married her high school sweetheart Scott right after graduation. By 23, she had 2 daughters, and the picture-perfect suburban life our parents always envisioned. I left for art school in Chicago at 18 and rarely looked back. Holiday phone calls and occasional birthday cards marked the extent of our relationship over the last decade. The distance was deliberate on my part. Every conversation with my parents inevitably turned to comparisons with Elaine's seemingly perfect life, subtle digs about my career choice, or questions about when I would finally settle down. It was easier to build a new life than constantly defend the one I had chosen. So when my phone lit up at 1:17 a.m. with my parents' number, I almost didn't answer. Something made me pick up on the fourth ring. My mother's voice came through, shaking and barely recognizable. Ruby, there's been an accident. Elaine's car went off Thompson Bridge. She's in a coma at Millfield General. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Despite our differences, Elaine was still my sister. Memories flooded back of us as children before expectations and differences pulled us apart. Is she going to be okay? I managed to ask already, searching for flights on my laptop. The doctors don't know. Her brain swelling needs to go down before they can assess the damage. But Ruby, that's not why we're calling. My father's voice came on the line, then gruff with emotion. The girls need someone to care for them. Emma and Lily. They need family right now. I realized with a start they hadn't mentioned Scott at all. Where's Scott? Can't he take care of them? A strange pause followed. He's unavailable right now, my mother finally said. Please, Ruby. We're too old to keep up with them. They need you. Elaine would want you to help. That was the first red flag I should have noticed, but in my shock, I missed it completely. Of course I'll help. I'll be on the first flight tomorrow. I can work remotely for a while. The relief in their voices was palpable, almost excessive, given my immediate agreement. Another warning sign I ignored. Thank you, Ruby. We knew we could count on you. My father said, his voice thick with emotion I rarely heard from him. After hanging up, I sat in the dark of my apartment, the city lights casting long shadows across my living room. A deep sense of guilt washed over me. I had kept my distance for so long, and now my sister might die without us ever reconciling. The nieces I barely knew needed me. I called my assistant and rearranged my schedule for the foreseeable future, explaining a family emergency. I packed enough clothes for 2 weeks, naively thinking that would be sufficient. Before the sun rose, I had booked a flight arranged for a neighbor to water my plants and prepared to temporarily abandon the life I had so carefully constructed. As I locked my apartment door, I had no idea I was walking into a family secret that would force me to confront not just my past, but a dangerous present that my parents had deliberately hidden from me. The flight to Indianapolis was just under 2 hours, followed by an hour drive to Millfield. With each mile that brought me closer to my hometown, I felt myself regressing from confident urban professional to uncertain daughter. The familiar landscape of cornfields and small farms gradually gave way to the town where I'd spent 18 years desperate to escape. My parents' two-story colonial looked exactly the same, right down to the blue hydrangeas my mother had always meticulously maintained along the front walk. Dad opened the door before I could knock his face more lined than I remembered. Mom appeared behind him, hair now completely gray. They both looked smaller somehow, as if the years had compressed them. "Ruby, thank goodness you're here," Mom said, pulling me into a hug that felt both familiar and strange. She smelled the same, a combination of drugstore perfume and fabric softener that instantly transported me back to childhood. Dad took my suitcase without a word, but squeezed my shoulder as he passed the closest thing to affection he typically showed. "Where are the girls?" I asked, scanning the living room. It looked frozen in time, the same floral sofa, the same family photos on the wall, including my senior picture I had always hated. "Upstairs napping," Mom whispered. "They've been through so much. We thought it best to let them sleep while they can." "I'd like to see my old room if that's where I'll be staying," I said, following Dad up the familiar staircase. To my surprise, my childhood bedroom remained virtually untouched, like a museum exhibit of teenage Ruby. The walls were still the deep purple I'd painted them my sophomore year. Band posters and art prints remained tacked to the walls. Even my collection of art supplies sat organized in bins under the window. "We never changed it," Mom said from the doorway. "Always hoped you'd visit more." The unspoken accusation hung in the air between us. "I'll freshen up and then I'd like to see Elaine," I said, deflecting the guilt trip. "And meet the girls when they wake up." An hour later, I stood in the ICU of Millfield General Hospital, staring at my sister's still form. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped rhythmically. Her face was swollen, bruised beyond recognition. A large bandage wrapped around her head covered what the doctor had described as a severe traumatic brain injury. "The impact was catastrophic," Dr. Levinson explained. "She's stable but unresponsive. We're monitoring the intracranial pressure carefully." "Will she wake up?" I asked, voicing the question everyone feared. "It's impossible to say. The next few weeks are critical. Some patients recover, others." He left the sentence unfinished, but his meaning was clear. Looking at Elaine, I barely recognized the sister who had always seemed invincible to me. She had been the perfect one, the standard I could never meet. Now she looked fragile human in a way I'd never allowed myself to see before. I gently took her hand, surprised by how cold it felt. "I'm here, Elaine. I'm going to take care of Emma and Lily until you get better." The words felt strange in my mouth, a promise I wasn't sure I knew how to keep. Back at my parents' house, I finally met my nieces. They came downstairs together, holding hands like they were facing a firing squad rather than meeting their aunt. Emma, the 9-year-old, had Elaine's serious expression and observant eyes. Her brown hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she assessed me with a maturity beyond her years. Lily, 7, reminded me startlingly of myself at that age, all curious energy barely contained in her small frame. Her blonde hair was a tangled mess, and she bit her lip nervously as she studied me. "Girls, this is your Aunt Ruby," my mother said. "She's going to stay with us and help take care of you while your mom gets better." "Hi," I said, crouching down to their level. "I'm really sorry about your mom. I know this must be scary." Emma nodded solemnly while Lily continued to stare. "You look like the pictures," Lily finally said. "What pictures?" I asked. "The ones Mom keeps in her special box. She said you draw pictures of fancy houses." My heart clenched. Elaine had kept photos of me, had told her daughters about me while I had remained willfully disconnected from their lives. "I design how houses look inside," I explained. "I could show you some of my drawings sometime if you'd like." Lily nodded enthusiastically, but Emma remained guarded. "When is Mom coming home?" she asked, directing the question to my mother rather than me. "We don't know yet, sweetheart. Mom answered. The doctors are taking good care of her. And where's Daddy? Lily asked innocently. A strange tension immediately filled the room. My parents exchanged a quick glance before Dad cleared his throat. Remember what we talked about, girls? Daddy had to go away for work. He'll be in touch when he can. Emma's expression darkened, and she squeezed Lily's hand tighter. Come on, Lily, let's go play upstairs. As they retreated, I turned to my parents. What's going on with Scott? Why isn't he here when his wife is in critical condition and his daughters need him? Another meaningful look passed between them. It's complicated, Mom finally said. Scott and Elaine were going through some difficulties. It's better this way, trust us. Better that their father is absent when their mother might be dying, I pressed. Ruby, please, Dad interjected. There are things you don't understand. For now, let's focus on the girls. They need stability. I reluctantly let the subject drop, but filed away this strange behavior for further investigation. Meanwhile, I needed to figure out how to set up a temporary workspace in my childhood bedroom and adapt to suddenly being responsible for two traumatized children. That first night, I sat at my old desk responding to client emails and rescheduling meetings, while listening to the unfamiliar sounds of children getting ready for bed in the next room. My mother's voice softly reading a story, my father's heavier footsteps in the hallway, the occasional question or comment from the girls. I was an outsider in this tableau of family life, brought in by necessity rather than choice. Yet something in me wanted to bridge that gap to be more than just the emergency backup plan. I just didn't know how or if I was even capable of being what these children needed. Over the next few days, I established a tentative routine. Mornings were for work calls while the girls were at school. Afternoons involved picking them up, helping with homework, and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Evenings were split between hospital visits and family dinners that felt like performances where everyone was reading from different scripts. It was during the third afternoon that I began noticing truly concerning patterns. I was helping Emma with her math homework when Lily came into the kitchen, eyes wide. Aunt Ruby, is that Daddy's car? She asked, pointing out the window at a blue sedan passing slowly down the street. Emma immediately dropped her pencil and ran to the window, her face pale. It's not him, she said, after a moment relief evident in her voice as she returned to the table. The license plate is different. Why are you girls so worried about seeing your dad's car? I asked casually, trying to mask my growing concern. Emma shot Lily a warning look before responding. We miss him. We just want to know when he's coming back. But her body language told a completely different story. Her shoulders were tense, her eyes avoiding mine. Later that evening, I overheard the girls talking in their bedroom when they thought no one was listening. Do you think Daddy will find us here? Lily's small voice carried through the partially open door. No, Emma replied firmly. Grandma said he doesn't know where we are. And if he calls, we're not supposed to talk to him, remember. But what if he gets mad again? He can't hurt us if he can't find us. Aunt Ruby won't let him. She looks strong. I retreated silently, my mind racing. Why would my nieces be afraid of their father finding them? Why would my parents hide this from me? The next morning, I volunteered to help Lily with her bath. As I helped her undress, I noticed faded yellowish bruises on her back and upper arms. My blood ran cold. Lily, what happened here? I asked gently, touching one of the marks. She looked down suddenly, very interested in her rubber duck. I fell down. All these marks from falling down. That must have been a bad fall. She was quiet for a long moment. Daddy got mad because I spilled milk on the new carpet. He said I was careless. I kept my expression neutral despite the rage building inside me. What happened when he got mad? He grabbed my arms really hard and shook me. Then he pushed me into my room. Her voice had gotten very small. Emma says I shouldn't talk about it because it makes Mom sad. I helped her finish her bath, my mind churning with this new information. That night, I drove to the hospital alone, determined to find answers. Sitting beside Elaine's still form, I noticed a small duffel bag in the corner of the room. Those are Elaine's personal belongings from when she was brought in, a nurse explained when I asked. Your parents took most of her things, but they left that bag. Inside, I found Elaine's wallet, a change of clothes, and at the bottom, a worn leather-bound journal. I hesitated only briefly before opening it. The entries spanning the last 2 years told a horrifying story. Scott, once the charming high school sweetheart, had gradually become controlling, jealous, and eventually violent. The earliest incidents were accidents that left bruises followed by tearful apologies. Then came deliberate axe shoves that sent Elaine into walls, a slap that left her ear ringing for days, threats that kept her in constant fear. The most recent entry, dated just 3 days before the accident, was the most disturbing. He found the apartment listings I'd been hiding. He knows I'm planning to leave. He said if I try to take the girls, he'll make sure I never see them again. I have to be so careful now. Mom and Dad are helping me figure out what to do. We're going to leave on Tuesday when he's at his conference. Everything's arranged. I just need to hold on a few more days. Tuesday. The accident had happened Monday night. I slammed the journal shut, trembling with anger and horror. I drove back to my parents' house in a fog, the pieces finally falling into place. When I arrived, the girls were already asleep. I found my parents in the living room watching TV as if our entire family wasn't in the midst of a crisis. "Why didn't you tell me Scott was abusing Elaine and possibly the girls?" I demanded without preamble. Their expressions confirmed my suspicions before they even spoke. Mom turned off the television while Dad sat forward, sighing heavily. "We didn't want to burden you with this," Mom began. "You've been away from family matters for so long." "Burden me? My sister was being abused. Her children were in danger, and now she's in a coma. Don't you think I deserve to know what I was walking into?" Dad's jaw tightened. "Families handle their own problems, Ruby. Elaine didn't want anyone outside the immediate family to know." "I am immediate family," I exploded. "I'm her sister, for God's sake." "You haven't been part of this family in any meaningful way for years," Dad shot back. "You left and barely looked back. Suddenly you want to be involved in every detail." His words stung because there was truth in them. I had kept my distance, but that didn't excuse their deception. "You should have told me the truth when you asked me to take care of the girls," I insisted. "Scott is dangerous. What if he comes looking for them here?" Mom wrung her hands. "We didn't think he would. No one knows you've come back to take care of the girls." "So I was your secret weapon, the sister who's been absent so long that Scott wouldn't connect her to his children." The realization was like a slap. "You put me and these children at risk without even warning me." "We did what we thought was best," Dad maintained stubbornly. "Divorce is shameful enough without airing all the family's dirty laundry." I stared at him in disbelief. "Dirty laundry? Scott was physically abusing your daughter, and possibly your grandchildren, and you're worried about appearances." "You don't understand what it's like in a small town," Mom said. "Everyone talks. We wanted to help Elaine leave quietly, maintain some dignity. And now she's in a coma, possibly because Scott found out about her plans to leave. Have you considered that?" The color drained from both their faces. It was clear they had, but couldn't bring themselves to speak it aloud. "I need to know everything," I said. "Right now, no more secrets." The following morning, I dropped the girls at school and drove to the local police station. Officer Daniels, a woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor, pulled the accident report for me. "Single vehicle accident, car went off Thompson Bridge into the ravine around 11 p.m. Monday night," she summarized. "No skid marks indicating braking. Weather was clear, road was dry. Your sister was alone in the vehicle." "Were there any witnesses?" I asked. Officer Daniels hesitated. "Two people reported seeing the accident. An elderly man walking his dog said he thought he saw another vehicle near your sister's car just before the accident, but he couldn't be certain. A teenager driving in the opposite direction reported seeing headlights swerve suddenly." "So it's possible another car forced her off the road." "Possible, but not conclusive. We classified it as a single vehicle accident, pending further investigation." "Has anyone spoken to her husband, Scott Matthews?" A flicker of recognition crossed the officer's face. "Mr. Matthews provided a statement, said he was home with their children at the time." "That's not possible. The children were with my parents that night." Officer Daniels' expression sharpened. "Are you certain of that?" "Absolutely. My mother told me she picked up the girls from school that day because Elaine had errands to run." The officer made a note in the file. "That directly contradicts Mr. Matthews' statement." "There is something else you should know," I said, leaning forward. My sister was planning to leave Scott. He was physically abusive to her and possibly the children. Then Officer Daniels didn't look surprised. We've responded to domestic disturbance calls at their address 3 times in the past year. No charges were ever filed. She was afraid, I explained, feeling a surge of helplessness. She was planning to leave him the day after the accident happened. That changes things, Officer Daniels said. I'll reopen the investigation and speak with your parents about the children's whereabouts that night. After leaving the police station, I drove to Elaine's neighborhood, finding the house where she had lived with Scott and the girls. It was a neat ranch-style home with a well-maintained lawn, the picture of suburban respectability. I knocked on the neighbor's door across the street. A middle-aged woman answered, introducing herself as Margaret Porter. When I explained who I was, she invited me in for coffee. "I've been so worried about Elaine," she said. "Such a terrible accident. How is she doing out still in a coma?" I replied. "Mrs. Porter, I'm trying to piece together what was happening in my sister's life before the accident. Did you ever notice anything concerning between Elaine and Scott?" Margaret stared into her coffee cup for a long moment. I didn't want to speak ill, especially now, but yes. There were incidents. Shouting late at night, things breaking. Once I saw Elaine outside at 2 a.m. sitting in her car like she needed to escape but couldn't quite bring herself to drive away. "Did you ever see any signs that he might have hurt her physically?" "Last summer she had sunglasses on for 2 weeks straight. When she finally took them off, there was a faded bruise around her eye. She claimed she walked into a door." Margaret shook her head. "No one walks into doors that often." "What about the night of the accident? Did you notice anything unusual?" "Scott's truck left around 10:30 that night. I remember because my show had just ended. He came back about an hour later driving very fast and nearly hit my mailbox." My heart raced. "Are you certain the police report said he claimed to be home with the children?" "The children weren't even there that day. I saw Elaine's mother pick them up after school. They never came home." I thanked Margaret and left with a growing sense of dread. Back at my parents' house, I waited until after dinner to talk to the girls alone. We sat in their bedroom, the door closed to ensure privacy. "Girls, I need to ask you some important questions," I began carefully. "It's about your dad." Emma immediately tensed while Lily clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter. "Did your dad ever hurt you or your mom?" Emma remained silent, but Lily nodded slowly. "Sometimes he gets really mad and turns red like a tomato." "What happens when he gets that mad?" "He yells really loud," Lily said, "and he throws things." Emma finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "He pushed Mom down the stairs once. He said it was an accident, but he was yelling at her right before it happened." "Did he ever hurt you, Emma?" She looked down at her hands. "Only when I tried to stop him from hurting Mom or Lily. He said big girls don't cry, so I stopped crying when he squeezed my arms or pushed me." I fought to keep my expression neutral, despite the rage building inside me. "Do you know where your dad is now?" "Grandma said he's looking for us, but he won't find us here because he doesn't know Aunt Ruby," Lily volunteered. "Are you afraid of him finding you?" Both girls nodded without hesitation. "I promise I won't let him hurt you," I said, gathering them both into a hug. "You're safe with me." Later that night, I searched social media for any sign of Scott's whereabouts. Through a mutual friend of his who had recently checked in at a local bar, I found a comment from Scott mentioning he was laying low at the Sunset Motel until things blow over. The Sunset Motel was a rundown establishment on the outskirts of town, known primarily as a place where people went when they didn't want to be found. I debated going there immediately, but decided to wait. I needed more information first. The next morning, after getting the girls to school, I drove to the Sunset Motel. The parking lot contained only a few vehicles, including a blue sedan matching the description Lily had reacted to. I noted the license plate confirming it wasn't the same car that had passed our house. Room 17 had Scott's truck parked directly outside. I steeled myself and knocked on the door. Scott Matthews had aged since I'd last seen him at his wedding to Elaine, nearly a decade ago. His once athletic build had softened around the middle, and his hairline had receded significantly. When he recognized me, his expression shifted from confusion to wariness. "Ruby, what are you doing here?" "Can I come in, Scott?" We need to talk about Elaine and the girls. He hesitated, but stepped aside, allowing me into the dingy motel room. Empty fast food containers and beer cans littered the small table by the window. "How did you find me?" he asked, clearing some clothes from a chair to offer me a seat. "Small town," I replied vaguely. "Everyone knows everyone's business." "Right." He sat on the edge of the unmade bed. "How's Elaine doing?" "Still in a coma. The doctors aren't sure if she'll wake up." He ran a hand over his face, a picture of a concerned husband. "And my girls, are they okay?" "They're with my parents. They miss their mother." I watched him carefully. "They seem scared, Scott." "Of course they're scared. Their mother is in the hospital." "They're scared of you," I said bluntly. His expression hardened instantly. "What exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I've seen the bruises on Lily. Emma told me how you pushed Elaine down the stairs. The neighbors have heard the fighting seen Elaine's injuries." Scott stood abruptly. "You've been back, what, a week, and suddenly you think you know everything about our family. This is none of your business, Ruby." "It became my business when my sister ended up in a coma, and I took responsibility for her traumatized children." "They're my children," he snarled, taking a step toward me. "And I want them back." I stood my ground. "The police are reinvestigating Elaine's accident. They know you lied about having the girls that night." A flash of panic crossed his face before he masked it. "That was a misunderstanding." "Was it also a misunderstanding when you followed Elaine the night of her accident, when you ran her off that bridge?" His face contorted with rage. "You don't know what you're talking about. Elaine was leaving me, taking my children. She had no right." The confession hung in the air between us. Scott seemed to realize his mistake, immediately backpedaling. "I meant she was planning to leave. The accident was just that, an accident. The police have a witness who saw another car near hers before she went off the bridge. A neighbor saw you leave home and return right around the time of the accident." "Get out," Scott growled. "Get out now, or I swear you'll what hurt me, like you hurt Elaine, like you hurt your daughters." He moved so quickly I barely had time to react, grabbing my arm and yanking me toward the door. "I want my daughters back, Ruby. One way or another, I will get them back." I wrenched free of his grip. "Stay away from them, Scott. If you come anywhere near those girls, I will make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison." Back in my car, I called Officer Daniels to report the encounter and Scott's implied confession. She promised to bring him in for further questioning, but cautioned that without direct evidence, they might not be able to hold him. When I arrived home, my parents were waiting for me, faces grim. "Where have you been?" Mom demanded. "The school called. No one picked up the girls." My stomach dropped. "What, I thought you were getting them today." "I had an appointment." "We never agreed to that," Dad said. "We had a doctor's appointment for your mother's blood pressure." I checked the time, realizing with horror that school had let out nearly an hour ago. "Have you checked if they're at a friend's house?" called the school. "Of course we have," Mom snapped. "No one has seen them." "Ruby, what if Scott—" The same fear had already formed in my mind. I was dialing Officer Daniels when the front door burst open and my nieces rushed in, followed by our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy. "I'm so sorry for the confusion," she said breathlessly. "The girls were waiting at school, and when no one came, they walked to my house since it's close by. I would have called, but I don't have your number." Relief washed over me as I thanked Mrs. Abernathy profusely. After she left, I sat the girls down for a serious conversation. "There was a mix-up today about who was picking you up," I explained. "If that ever happens again, stay at school and have them call us, okay? It's not safe to leave with anyone unless we've arranged it in advance." "Because of Dad?" Emma asked perceptively. I exchanged glances with my parents. There was no point hiding the truth anymore. "Yes, because of your dad. He's very upset right now, and we want to make sure you're safe." "Did you see him today?" Lily asked, her voice small. I hesitated before answering. "Yes, I did. And I told him that you're staying with us until your mom gets better." "Was he mad?" Emma pressed. "He was upset," I acknowledged. "But don't worry, the police are watching him, and we're going to make sure you're safe." That night, after the girls were asleep, my parents finally told me everything. They had known about Scott's abuse for over 2 years, but had encouraged Elaine to work on her marriage for the sake of the children. It was only when Scott broke Elaine's wrist 3 months ago that they finally helped her plan an escape. We found her an apartment in Indianapolis, Mom explained. Paid the deposit. She was going to file for emergency custody and a restraining order once they were settled. And you didn't think to involve the police before her accident? I asked incredulously. Elaine didn't want that, Dad insisted. She was embarrassed, afraid of how it would look. How it would look? I repeated. She nearly died. She still might. We know we made mistakes, Mom said, tears streaming down her face. We should have done more sooner. And you should have told me the truth from the beginning, I added. Instead, you put me and the girls at risk by keeping me in the dark. Dad looked away, unable to meet my gaze. We thought it would be safer. Scott didn't know you were involved. You were our secret protection for the girls. I wasn't a person to you, I said bitterly. I was just a tool, a convenient solution that wouldn't disrupt your reputation in town. That's not fair, Ruby, Mom protested. Isn't it? You've always seen me as less important than Elaine. Always her feelings, her reputation, her needs above mine. Now you've dragged me into her dangerous situation without even the courtesy of warning me. For the first time, my father looked genuinely ashamed. We were wrong, he admitted quietly. We should have told you everything from the start. I was still processing this unprecedented admission when the front door crashed open. Scott stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his hair, eyes wild and unfocused. The smell of alcohol wafted across the room. Where are my daughters? He demanded, swaying slightly. Dad stood immediately. You need to leave Scott. Now. Not without Emma and Lily. He took an unsteady step forward. They're my children, mine. I moved between Scott and the stairs leading to the girls' bedroom. They're asleep, Scott, and you're drunk. Come back when you're sober and we can talk about supervised visitation. His face contorted with rage. Don't tell me when I can see my own kids. He lunged forward, shoving my father aside when he tried to intervene. Mom screamed and ran to the kitchen, presumably to call 911. Scott focused his attention on me, the only barrier between him and the stairs. Get out of my way, Ruby. This doesn't concern you. It absolutely concerns me when you threaten my family. Family, he sneered. You haven't been part of this family in years. You think you can waltz back in and take my children? I stood my ground. I'm not taking anyone. I'm protecting them until Elaine recovers. Elaine's not recovering, he spat. And even if she does, she's never taking my kids from me. From upstairs came the sound of a door opening. Emma's voice drifted down. Aunt Ruby, what's happening? Scott's head snapped up. Emma, come down here, honey. Daddy's come to take you home. Go back to your room, Emma, I called, never taking my eyes off Scott. Lock the door and stay with Lily. Scott's expression darkened further. He charged forward, grabbing me by the shoulders and throwing me against the wall. My head cracked against the plaster, momentarily stunning me. Daddy, stop! Emma cried from the top of the stairs, Lily peeking fearfully from behind her. Girls, go back to your room now, I shouted, pushing myself away from the wall. Scott was already halfway up the stairs. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy crystal vase, and threw it at him. It smashed against the wall beside him, spraying glass and water. The police are on their way, my mother announced, returning from the kitchen. Scott, please don't make this worse. He ignored her, continuing his ascent. The girls had retreated, but I could hear Lily crying behind their bedroom door. I raced up the stairs after him, adrenaline surging. As Scott reached for the doorknob, I tackled him from behind, sending us both crashing into the hallway wall. Photo frames shattered around us. Scott recovered quickly, turning and swinging wildly. His fist connected with my jaw, sending me sprawling. Stars exploded in my vision as I hit the floor. You should have stayed in Chicago, Ruby, he growled, standing over me. This isn't your fight. I saw my father struggling up the stairs behind him, clutching his side where Scott had shoved him. Beyond the bedroom door, I could hear Lily's terrified sobs and Emma trying to comfort her. In that moment, something crystallized within me. These girls weren't just my nieces. They were children who needed protection. My sister's daughters, my family. As Scott turned toward the bedroom door again, I lunged forward from my position on the floor, grabbing his legs and toppling him. He went down hard, his head smacking against the wooden floor. I scrambled to my feet, spotting the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall at the end of the hallway. I yanked it free just as Scott was rising. "Stay down," I warned, raising the extinguisher. He charged anyway. I swung the heavy cylinder, connecting solidly with his shoulder. He stumbled, but kept coming. I discharged the extinguisher directly into his face, filling the hallway with white powder. Scott fell back, temporarily blinded and choking. I seized the opportunity to grab the girl's doorknob, relieved, to find they hadn't locked it after all. "Emma, Lily, come with me now," I ordered, my voice leaving no room for argument. They both ran to me immediately. I ushered them past their coughing father and down the stairs where I could hear sirens approaching. "In here," I directed, pulling them into the downstairs bathroom and locking the door behind us. "We're going to wait here until the police come." Emma was trembling but composed. Lily was sobbing uncontrollably. I pulled them both into my arms, my back against the door as a final barrier. "It's okay," I murmured into their hair. "You're safe. I've got you. I won't let anyone hurt you." Promise," Lily hiccuped. "I promise," I said firmly. "No one will ever hurt you again." We huddled there until we heard multiple voices in the house, the authoritative tones of police officers, the sounds of a struggle, and finally a knock on the bathroom door. "Ms. Harrison, this is Officer Daniels. It's safe to come out now." I opened the door cautiously, keeping the girls behind me, until I confirmed Scott was indeed in handcuffs, being led out the front door by 2 officers. "Are you all right?" Officer Daniels asked, noting my rapidly swelling jaw and the blood from where my head had hit the wall. "We'll be okay," I answered, feeling Emma's small hand slip into mine, Lily clutching the back of my shirt. As paramedics checked us over and officers took statements, I kept the girls close, watching as Scott was placed in a police car. His eyes met mine through the window, hatred burning in them. But I felt no fear, only resolve. He had no power here anymore. That night, after the chaos subsided, I sat with the girls until they fell asleep, then joined my parents in the kitchen. We were all bruised and shaken, but something fundamental had shifted. "You were right," Dad said quietly. "We should have told you everything from the beginning. We've always underestimated you, Ruby. I'm sorry for that." It was the most direct apology I'd ever received from him. Mom reached across the table and took my hand, her eyes full of regret and a new respect. "You protected them when we couldn't," she said, "when we were too afraid to do what was needed years ago." "I'm not the same person who left at 18, I told them. "And I'm not just a convenient solution to your problems. I'm family, and I deserve the truth always." They both nodded, a new understanding forming between us. For the first time in my adult life, I felt seen by my parents not as Elaine's rebellious younger sister, but as a strong, capable woman in my own right. 2 months after Scott's arrest, life had found a new rhythm. Scott remained in custody, denied bail due to the severity of the charges against him: attempted murder for Elaine's accident, domestic violence, child endangerment, and assault for the attack at my parents' house. The evidence had mounted quickly once police began a proper investigation. Cell phone records placed him near Thompson Bridge at the time of Elaine's accident. A paint transfer on her car matched his truck. 2 additional witnesses came forward after news of his arrest, spread reporting seeing a truck similar to Scott's speeding away from the scene. Most significantly, Elaine had awakened from her coma 3 weeks after the attack at my parents' house. Though her speech was slurred and her memory spotty, she confirmed Scott had been following her the night of the accident, having discovered her plans to leave him the next day. Recovery would be long for Elaine. Traumatic brain injuries don't heal overnight. She would need extensive physical and speech therapy, and there were cognitive deficits that might never fully resolve. But she was alive and free from Scott's abuse at last. I had made the decision to relocate permanently. Not back to my parents' house, but to a spacious apartment in Millfield's small downtown area, close enough for the girls to remain in their school and visit Elaine regularly at the rehabilitation facility, but with enough space to establish our own household. The temporary guardianship papers had been straightforward. With Elaine's consent and Scott in jail awaiting trial, I became the girls' legal guardian until Elaine could care for them again, a timeline the doctors estimated at 1 to 2 years. My design business adapted surprisingly well. I still traveled to Chicago twice a month for important client meetings, leaving the girls with my parents during those brief trips. Otherwise, I worked remotely converting one bedroom of our apartment into a home office. Several local clients had even sought me out after hearing I had returned to town. Emma and Lily were resilient in the way children often are when finally feeling safe. Emma's guarded nature gradually softened as she realized I wasn't going to disappear. Lily's nightmares decreased from nightly to occasional. They both attended weekly therapy sessions, processing their trauma with professional help. On a crisp Saturday in November, I took them to visit Elaine at the rehabilitation center. Her progress was evident in her clearer speech and stronger movements, though she still tired easily. "Ruby," she said after the girls had gone to the recreation room for ice cream, "I never thanked you properly." "There's no need," I assured her. "They're amazing kids. I'm just glad I can help." She shook her head, a movement that still required visible effort. "Not just for taking them, for standing up to Scott when I couldn't, for believing the girls when they told you what was happening." I took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. "I wish you had told me sooner, called me, reached out somehow." "I was ashamed," she admitted. Perfect Elaine with her perfect life, too proud to admit it was all falling apart. "And you were so successful, so independent. I didn't want you to see me as weak." I laughed softly. "Is that how you saw me? I always thought you were the golden child, and I was the family disappointment. Mom and Dad bragged about you constantly after you left. Their daughter, the successful designer in Chicago. I was just the one who stayed married young, never did anything special." The irony wasn't lost on me. All those years of feeling inadequate compared to my sister, while she had felt the same about me. "Well, we've both seen each other at our most vulnerable now," I said. "No more pretending to be perfect." She squeezed my hand weakly. "Deal." That evening, my parents came over for dinner, a new weekly tradition. Dad helped Emma with a school project while Mom and I prepared the meal, Lily supervising from her perch on a kitchen stool. "I've been thinking," Mom said as she chopped vegetables, "we never gave you enough credit, Ruby. Always comparing you to Elaine, trying to make you fit a mold that wasn't right for you." I paused in my stirring, surprised by her candor. "We pushed you away," she continued, "and I'm sorry for that. Watching you with the girls these past months. You're an incredible woman, Ruby. I'm proud of the person you've become, not despite your differences from what we expected, but because of them." It was the acknowledgement I had longed for since childhood. Not approval for conforming, but recognition of my value as exactly who I was. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means more than you know." Later, after my parents had gone home and the girls were in bed, I stood at the window of our apartment looking out over the small town I had once been so desperate to escape. Life had come full circle in the strangest way. I had returned to Millfield not as a failure, but as a rescuer, a protector. The family I now had wasn't what I had ever imagined for myself. A sister slowly healing two nieces who depended on me, parents with whom I was building a new, more honest relationship. It was messy and complicated, and nothing like the independent life I had constructed in Chicago. Yet somehow, it felt right. Not a compromise or a temporary solution, but a genuine choice I was making each day. Emma appeared in the doorway of her bedroom, hair tousled from sleep. "Aunt Ruby, is everything okay?" I smiled at her. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about how much has changed." She patted over in her fuzzy socks and leaned against me. "Good changes, though, right?" "Mostly good," I agreed, putting my arm around her shoulders. "Some hard ones, too, but we're figuring it out together. Mom's getting better," she observed. "But I'm glad we still get to live with you." "Me too," I said, surprised to realize how completely I meant it. "Lily had a nightmare," Emma confessed. "She's afraid to go back to sleep." "Let's go sit with her for a while," I suggested, leading Emma back toward their shared bedroom. Lily was sitting up in bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her face brightened when she saw us. "Can you tell us a story, Aunt Ruby?" I settled onto the edge of her bed. "What kind of story would you like? A true one," Emma requested, climbing back into her own bed. "About when you and Mom were little." As I began recounting a childhood adventure, watching their faces relax into smiles, I realized that this unexpected family we had formed was healing me as much as I was helping them. The wounds of the past months would take time to fully mend, but we were on the path together. Sometimes the most profound gifts come from the most painful situations. My sister's tragedy had brought me back to a place I never thought I'd return to become someone I never imagined I could be. Not just Aunt Ruby, but a protector, a confidant, a steady presence these children could count on. I wasn't the sibling my parents could sacrifice anymore. I was the woman who had found her strength in protecting those she loved. And in that protection, I had found a version of myself I could be proud of, a family that valued me, not despite my differences, but because of them. Have you ever had a moment when standing up for someone else helped you find your own voice, or when family secrets nearly destroyed everything until the truth finally came out? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button if this resonated with you. And remember, sometimes the family we build through crisis becomes stronger than the one we had before. Thank you for listening, and I hope whatever challenges you're facing, you find the strength to protect both yourself and those who need you.